Hello, thanks for joining me again. I haven't posted anything in a long time. Busy getting the studio up and running. We've been running for 2 years now. Teach a lot of classes here, fire a lot of stuff. So it's been busy. But anyways, get a lot of questions about bowls specifically, and I saw a video the other day where the title was how to throw a beginning bowl, and they used probably like 7 pounds of clay. There's a lot of people who are intermediates who can't throw 7 pounds of clay, so I don't know why you would start somebody out with that much clay. Plus, from a perspective of someone starting a class, you throw a 7-pound bowl, 25 pounds of clay is that standard size of a bag, and you can only really throw 3 bowls. So it's kind of a waste. It's much better to be more efficient with the smaller amount and work your way up to a bigger piece of clay. This is exactly 1.5 pounds of clay. I think to start off with cylinders, mugs, all that, you should probably 1 pound. 1.5 pounds is not a huge jump, but I think if you could get this technique down, then slowly, gradually work your way up to 1 1/4 or 1 3/4, 2 pounds, etc. So I just have like this gumdrop shape. You want to make sure that the bottom is smooth. It's slightly higher in the middle, so when I put it on the wheel like that, the air gets pushed out. And then I'm just going to lightly pat the sides down, so I don't want to create any voids in here. So when I put water on it, the water's not going to go underneath. One thing I've been watching a lot lately is the first thing someone will do is they'll just grip the clay right away from here. It still may not be stuck to the wheel all that much, especially when you're first starting out. The tension in your arms and hands is usually too much. People just grip the clay. They want to scrape the clay and grind the clay, and they do all these techniques. I was taught this way, this way, this way, this way. All these methods that are I call the strong method, and I don't really see many of those work. If you watch anybody on YouTube, for example, like Simon Leach, Tim C, guys that have put up a lot of content, gentleman from Fremont, I can't pronounce his name, or any top professional ceramic potter working, they're not really, it doesn't look like they're grinding on it, they're locked their whole body. There's just this effort and this flow that's happening. It's because the tension in their arms and hands, they're relaxed enough to where they can feel the clay. So it's all about feeling the clay. So when you're first starting out, why not have that conversation now? I don't think there is a beginning way or an easier way to center. If there was an easier way or beginning way to center, I would be doing that. And I think Simon Leach would be doing that. I think Tim C would be doing that. I think Josh DeWeese would be doing that. I think Nick Schwartz would be doing that. But if you watch anybody, it's just this even flow. And it's because they may not be able to verbalize it, but what's happening is they are relaxed enough where they can feel the clay moving over and through their hands. Okay? First thing I'm going to do, flatten the clay. If this shape of your hand, if that's uncomfortable, you need to learn how to do that. So as I'm flattening it, it's getting stuck to the wheel. Now when I come up like this, now the thing someone will always say is, well, when you do that, I'll trap air in there. Well, if you keep your left hand, I'm going to pull this hand, my right hand towards me, so it's doing this. Right hand's going in, left hand's going this. So they're going towards each other. Right here, to these fingers are going towards each other. I'm going to pull with my right hand, push with my left hand. My left hand, and then I'm going to go up the side of the clay. As I'm going up the side of the clay, my left hand is staying a little bit higher and angled in. You see how that thumb goes over the top? That's how you don't create that little crater, because then it stays tapered like that. That's a good example of seeing that. So when I go up the side like this and I stay tapered, you won't get that. I'll cone one more time from here, get a little bit thinner. And if you think it's ridiculous, the reason for coning is to elongate the clay, to homogenize the clay, to kind of wheel wedge, for lack of a better term. So now I'll push it back down, and it's also compressing the clay. I'm aligning the particles in the clay, and it's doing the same thing that you would when you're wedging. Now sometimes with a lot of people, they get really wobbly down in here, so the fix for that is I'll flatten it again. Now you notice this line right here. What I have to be aware of is not dig my fingers in. But if I'm relaxed, but yet firm, I can create this shape with my right here and push that in, and I don't get that little crevice, that little groove that forms there. Now, if it's a little off down at the bottom, I'll pull up just a little tiny bit, maybe like a, not a little tiny bit, but maybe like a short cone, and then push it back down, and it's done, okay? Now when I open it up, I use my thumb and it's bent sideways, or just turn on the side and it's bent, so it's like this. And I'm gonna go into the clay. I'm gonna use this hand to push that thumb into the clay. If I let the muscles of this thumb take over, I'll throw off the inside. Now there's other ways to do it. People use the 2 fingers, you know, whatever you call that. You know, it doesn't really matter. But for me, I've settled into this way because my thumb is the strongest finger of the hand, and when it's turned sideways and it's bent, it's really strong. So I'm less likely to throw it off. And I just use my right hand to push it in. Now with a bowl, I need to reserve room in the floor, so when I trim, I have room to trim. I'm gonna leave about a 1/2 inch at the base, okay? And this is open than a lot of more people do it. Some people just put some, you know, hole, they sink the well like this, but after a while, if you throw something larger than 1.5 pounds of clay, you can only sink the well as something as deep as your thumb. And how do you get down there to the bottom and expose the floor? That's why a lot of people can't throw anything tall, because they can never utilize all the clay down at the base. They can never get this down here. So this way I can get in here, I'm gonna spread the floor, but unlike a cylinder where I'm squaring it up at a 90-degree angle to the wall, this one I'm gonna come out and up gradually. You wanna be careful to, I saw this one video where this person told you to grab this and lift up. That's a pretty advanced move. I don't think that's a beginner move. I guess you can try and do that, but what I've, in my experience teaching hundreds of beginners, is as soon as someone touches that with their thumb, with lack of experience, they squeeze. So when they squeeze, next thing you know, they have like this plate. We're not making plates. We're making a bowl. So I'm gonna go up and out gradually, okay? And I'll maybe do it 2 or 3 times. Go up and out gradually. So now it's a little bit wider right here. What I'll do now is I'll go like this, put all my fingers together, bend them so if I could get it as equal here as I can. If your fingers don't do that, then you could put a sponge in your fingers and do that and hold it down here. But sometimes the beginning move with the sponge is now you gotta grab onto this and do something with your hand. That's too hard. So if you could just limit all the tools that you're using, these are the best tools. Get used to using these first, then you can incorporate, then it's easier to incorporate other stuff. We will use a rib later on. So I'm gonna do this. But now I'm gonna push a tiny bit right here. I'm gonna push from here and hold it. And as I'm pushing out, I'm gonna go up with both hands. When I get to the top edge right here, put your finger right here, or something to compress that rim. So much emphasis gets put on compressing, and compressing is important. But when I cone the clay up and down, and I came across the bottom, and when I rib through this, it's gonna compress it. That coning part really compressed the clay a lot. I think I said it in a plate video that nearly all the cracking comes from using too much water, overworking the clay, and drying too fast. Especially when they trim a plate and you trim away the firm or the drier clay and you expose the wetter clay underneath and you just leave it uncovered. Pretty soon it dries really fast and then you're gonna crack. So I rarely have any bowls or plates or anything crack these days. And it's because I still use a lot of water, but I just get the moves done. The water's not sitting on there. I'm not eroding the clay. All right, back to this. So now I'm gonna make sure I keep this pressure in here. This diameter is what this hand's maintaining. Then I'm gonna come out. So my goal now is to get the thickness from here up. Now I'm gonna get most of the shape of the bowl. And when I get right about here to the top edge, I need to not slow down the wheel, or you just wanna slow down the rate in which your hands are going up the side to allow for the clay, because because now it's a greater distance now as it gets wider and wider. It has to go through my fingers. When a bowl gets thrown off center is because people go up too fast, and then there's a clay that didn't go through your fingers, didn't change thickness, and so it stayed the same. So now you got a thick spot, thin, thick. So if you could just maintain this, and as you get to right about here, slow it down a tiny bit, and let that clay catch up. Okay. Now I look down the edge right here and see this thickness. It's still pretty thick, so I'm gonna push, squeeze it right here, and then come up. Now, unlike the cylinder, my hands are in line with each other. My fingers are in line with each other. They're in line. When I make a pull of the cylinder, my inside hand is higher than my outside until I reach the top of the rim, and then of course I can't go any further with this one. This one catches up, I hold it there for a few seconds, steady the rim, take my hands away. With a bowl, they could be a little bit even. That's something that always gets missed. So I'm almost there. Now on a small bowl, you can get away with the wall thickness being fairly even from here to here. I mean, it's always gonna be a little bit thicker here, but you can get away with it being this down here a little bit thinner than you would on a larger bowl. Larger bowl, you have to have it a little bit thicker here than here on the rim to support the wall, to support the weight of the rest of the bowl. But in a small one, you can get away with having almost the exact evenness. So I'm looking right here, I'm going like this, I'm looking down the rim right here, and I can see the wall thickness down at the bottom. This is close to the finished width of my bowl diameter, or the foot diameter. Down here, I'll probably trim it a little bit more. I'll take out any water on the inside. Right there. Now you could stop there. I mean, that could be a bowl. But I'm not. I'm gonna take this rib, this Sherrill Mud rib. It's like the medium firm one, or second to, there's the blue one's the firmest, this one's right after it. Love these ribs. So we sell these here. Luckily we became a Sherrill Mud rib dealer, so all of our customers can have access. We don't have anything online, we're not a big ceramic supplier, but we just sell stuff to our customers so they don't have to drive into the hood to pick up a rib. You can just come here. So what I'm gonna do with this, a lot of people don't do this. I learned this from Bob Hodgson, who retired from Dabba Valley College a while ago. Anyways, tipped back, turn sideways a little bit, right here. I'm gonna use this part of the rib. I'm gonna go push out, make it wider, then I'm gonna go down and towards the middle. Push out, down and towards the middle. Push out, I'm gonna go down towards the middle. Now when I go down towards the middle, there's this like rolling thing that happens so the tip of the rib doesn't dig into the floor. Okay, and I'll move the camera really quick so you can see what's happening. Okay, so that's one. See how it's shaping this bowl already? And even people who are intermediate, who think they're intermediate, I don't know, I gotta think about like skill level, you know, like what is beginning intermediate, what is intermediate, what is intermediate advanced, what's advanced, what's professional. There's a lot of people selling pots now who I don't think they're they're professional on paper. They sell pots, they make a living doing it possibly. But as far as their skill and ability to throw and a variety of things, they can't do it. So skill level is an interesting thing. I really think a lot about. You want to ask yourself, where do I fit in that? You know, what is a beginner? You know, what is an intermediate? What is advanced? So I'll do this one more time. Right here. Push out a little bit, get that width a little bit wider of the bowl, and then I'm going to go down into the bowl. So the angle of the rib, it's not scraping, it's not chunking, and then the tip of it, when I roll it in there, is out of the way. And I'll show you, I'll change the camera shot. There's one little tiny raised thing that's there. Now there's this little tiny wobble in the rim, not a huge deal. Okay, I'm not gonna display this at home, you know, on a turntable. I'm gonna round this rim off. So as long as this rim is fairly level and round, I'm not a big cutting off of the pin tool. I think that's a bad habit. If you could avoid that, I would. So let me just show you the inside of this really quick. Pardon the camera width. So the inside, from here, you have a nice transition. There's no ridges, there's no inconsistencies. If you could get that and just have that nice smooth transition, then you can do any other bowl you want. You can do flat bottom bowls, you can do whatever, but practice that first. You have a nice transition. You have to leave enough clay on the bottom there. Now, some people don't use ribs at all for bowls. That's fine. Doesn't matter. I don't know what the argument is for that. If you want to make a bowl and you want the inside to be round like this, you just use the rib. That's what they have. They have all these tools. Let's use them. This comes in a basic kit. I just use this to smooth the outside. Also, to just maybe round the outside a little bit, kind of match the interior curvature with the outside a little bit so it doesn't look like it was an accident. You want this thing to have this round shape. There's something about the round shape of the bowl that you're drawn to it, and you're drawn into the interior, and you want to use it. There's metal ribs. There's these silicone ribs. These wood, metal, plastic, whatever. It's a personal preference. I don't think one is better than the other. People set them to them. I use these two. I use all three. I use a metal one. I use a wooden one. I use this one a lot. I don't use this for shaping the inside, but I use it for the outside quite a bit. Like I'll make an undercut. I use this almost like in replacement of this. But I use it on the outside with anyways. Okay, that's pretty much a bowl. If anything, use a chamois or a piece of plastic that's cut like the width of a stick of gum wrapper, and you just get it right on the edge, just lay it on here, down a little bit. Now, a couple closing things. People that watch some of my stuff, they'll always go, how come you don't throw on a bat? You're gonna throw it off if the beginner can't do that. Well, the beginner can't tack down a bat very good. Most people are lazy and they don't wanna tighten it down with the wrench or put a wing nut in there. A lot of people just forego the wing nut and the thing moves all over the place. I've seen heard one vlog post where somebody said, oh, my stuff is oval, I don't know why. And then everybody's, give her all these comments, and she said, oh, I know how to throw, I could do it. Well, what it sounded like to me is she didn't have her bats locked down enough. When the bats weren't locked down enough, the clay was oval. She thought her wheel was not level, and I think Tim C had a video. You could prove you don't have to. It doesn't have to be level. The wheel doesn't have to be level. So there's just all these myths out there. The other one, and this is more of a rant tirade thing, is the wheels when they go in reverse or forward. So most people in the Western world go counterclockwise. So on these Shimpo wheels, the counterclockwise is reverse. So in Japan, it's reverse. You flip it the other way and forward, it goes clockwise. And people always say, oh, you got to go clockwise if you're left-handed. Which, let's think about that. If the Shimpo wheel, if they're marking it as forward for clockwise, and if we tell people to go that if you're left-handed, you should go clockwise, that would mean that everybody in Japan is left-handed. And that's not true. It's just a matter of, they drive on the left side of the road in the UK, South Africa, Australia, Hong Kong. We drive on the other side. Driving steering wheels on the other side. So I don't know why people tell people that. It's not about left hand, right hand. If you're left-handed, you probably have a better advantage of throwing both ways. It doesn't matter. At some point, in pottery, you have to learn how to use both your hands independently and with each other in unison. So I made a little undercut on the bottom of this so I can get the wire underneath. The undercut, I just made like this little groove, little line right there. And because I didn't throw it with a lot of water and I have enough of a base here, all I have to do is just do that with dry hands, pick it up, set it down, put it on a wear board, and go. People always say, well, what about a bat? Blah, blah, blah. How come you didn't use a bat? Well, one, in a public studio, I don't provide, I think I have maybe 6 bats that were personal ones that I had before I opened up. And so I can't provide bats for everybody. And the other thing is space. If you're in a public studio, junior college, city program, wherever, there's not a lot of space. So if you got a little tiny cup or a little tiny bowl on a 14-inch bat or 12-inch bat, you've wasted all this space. You can stack them on top of each other, but that's just too many bats to be around the studio. The other is most beginners can't tack it down properly. And then some will say, well, put on a bat grabber, which I don't know if that company's around anymore, but you use like, like a foamy, skin on here. They use like contact, the new contact, real resin for contact, replacing contact paper in drawers. They line drawers with. They cut that out, put it on here, and it keeps the bat. But if you're throwing a lot and you're coning up and down, you can take the whole bat off. I learned they didn't even give us bat pins. We didn't even have splash pans. We did everything. We put clay down there, centered the clay, made a plate, put grooves in it, put an X through it, put a little bit of water on it, put the cut out piece of wood on there, and then hit the middle of it, and that was our bat. A lot of work, pain in the butt, but if you do a plate, you gotta use a bat. Do a platter, you gotta use a bat. Bowls, big ones, but you can get away with it. You can pick them up, take them off, then not a big deal. Pot lifters are just something else to wash, and they are around the counters in the studio. They just take up more room. If I owned the company for pot lifters, then I would tell you to use pot lifters. But I think if you can get it off the wheel and you feel like you need to use pot lifters, fine. But at least learn how to get it off the wheel. Don't cut corners just because somebody told you, use a pot lifter, don't touch it with your hands. Well, why can't you touch it with your hands? Oh, you'll leave marks, you'll dent it, you'll ruin it. It doesn't matter. You got to this point, your pot's not, if you're a beginner, your pot's not that even. It's probably thick, it's wobbly, the rim's uneven, so what? So I think just make it easier. Use less tools, there's less things to have to wash. It's just gonna make it easier, just streamline everything. And the last thing I'll just summarize is we'll go back to the very beginning when I talked about the tension in your arms and hands. That's very important when you're centering the clay, bringing it up and down. If you need a reminder, you could look at some of my other videos on how to center and making a cylinder. So I really appreciate it. Sorry about the little rant, tiny bit of a long video. That's okay, we had to get it done. There's no quick way to learning this, and sometimes the easiest way is the longest way in ceramics. So keep on throwing, keep on doing it, and thanks for watching. Subscribe and like, and I'll put out more content if whenever I can.